Hi, everyone, and welcome to Self-Care Sunday. We are going to do a breathing practice called 4-6-7 today to kind of reset our diaphragm, start to open up that space of the diaphragm and the lungs so that we can get a deeper breath in. Before we get started with that, today will be a short practice. But before we get started with a little explanation in the practice, I invite you to just pause, hit your pause button, take a moment to get into a place where you can either sit or stand or lie down and listen to the sound of the bell to slow things down a little bit for yourself. Take a few rounds of soft belly breaths. Letting your belly soft, you can breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth or your nose. Saying the word soft as you breathe in, the word belly as you breathe out. Remembering that when we do this, we're activating what's called the vagus nerve. Vagus means wandering. And the vagus nerve runs from your brain, touches in around your amygdala, which is your fear, highly reactive part of your brain. It's not just fear, but it's like your lookout for danger or safety. And so we are helping our amygdala settle when we do soft belly breathing. By toning the vagus nerve and calming the amygdala. The vagus nerve runs from your brain, and through parts of your face, your ears, and certain parts of your face. It plays a lot into facial expression and reading other people's facial expression. It goes through your throat, so it has a lot to do with your tone of voice or how you hear other people's tone of voice, whether it feels safe or dangerous. Goes through the lung and heart areas, so it's connected in with heartbeat, breathing rate, then down into your abdominal organs. So there's a lot with digestion that can be triggered or can be balanced out by your vagus nerve feeling toned and balanced. So vagus nerve is very important in learning how to manage stress and work through big emotions or anxiety. So soft belly breathing anytime, even if it's just for a few breaths or a few moments, is a very positive thing in our lives and can kind of help to retrain our amygdala. So before I go into the 4-6-7 breath, first of all, I just want to talk a little bit about carbon dioxide and oxygen in the blood. So a lot of times we hear, take a deep breath, you need more oxygen in. Well, here's the thing. If you've been in kind of more of a chest breathing space, like you've been doing more chest breathing up here, your shoulders are kind of lifting up and down, there's tension. Maybe you don't even realize it because you do it all the time, but really you're not using your diaphragm. There's not a lot of movement through the lower ribs or the belly area when you breathe, but it's all up here and it's kind of like more of an up and down breath rather than an expansive out and expand and back in breath, right? Retract back in. Then if that's how you're already breathing, taking a big breath can feel like I can't really get anything in there, right? Because you're already tense. You're not using your full capacity of your lungs to really get the oxygen down into that lower, I think they're the alveoli, that moves the oxygen out into the bloodstream. And so sometimes taking a deep breath can actually just add to the feeling of stress. And the oxygen isn't actually getting absorbed as fully as we need it to feel the effects. So yes, we're trying to get more oxygen in, but if your body's not ready to uptake the oxygen, then you're not going to get the oxygen in that you want. And usually if we're already breathing in kind of this faster way, more shallow way, tense way from the upper part of our torso, we're not really getting oxygen in the way that we think we are. So here's one way. There's more than one way to do this. I've done multiple ways of doing this with different teachers and courses on the breath and the nervous system. So, but this is one way. So when we start to feel anxious or like high stress, usually our carbon dioxide and our oxygen levels are getting imbalanced. And we actually need to kind of build up the carbon dioxide a little bit to help the breath and the diaphragm reset so that we can actually take in a full deep breath that moves the oxygen in and creates the right balance in our bloodstream. So this is biofeedback. I learned this from a biofeedback therapist several years ago. And there are lots of ways to do it. But the 4-6-7 breath is a kind of easy to remember way. So in the 4-6-7 breath, what we're doing is we're actually shortening our inhales a little bit. So you're going to breathe in for 2, 3, or 4, it's going to be shorter than the hold and the exhale. So the inhale might be like 4, and then you hold for like 6, 5 or 6, depending on what works for you. And then you breathe out for longer than you breathed in. So in this case, we're trying to breathe out for 7. Now, if when you do that, you feel strain, you feel tense, you're like panicky, it's not working, then adjust. You can breathe in for 2 and hold for 4 or 5, and then breathe out for 4, 5, 6, right? So kind of adjust the numbers, but you can see what ratios you're aiming for, right? 4, 6, 7, or something like that. It could be 2, 3, 4. It could be 2, 5, 6, 2, 4, 6, right? Start with that and then see if with practice you can build up to doing the 4-6-7 breath. So this can be used anytime, but I would suggest that you practice it daily and just any time, even when you're not feeling stressed, if you have moments like that. But when you're not feeling too overwhelmed, I would say practice it then. But then also try to set the intention that you use it when you're triggered by something or activated by something. Like your nervous system has a jolt of anxiety and tension with that, or a jolt of irritability or frustration with something or someone or a certain situation. Maybe there's a student that you're just like kind of get like something about them or the behavior that they have every day or most days kind of like just gets you, or a coworker or something a family member does. Maybe it's emails from a certain person or seeing certain posts on Facebook, whatever. We all have these triggers, which I don't really like that word, but people kind of get it when I say it. So, but we have these times of activation. I like that much better. We have these times of activation that we're very aware of, that whether we react outwardly or not, we feel it in our bodies like a reaction. And a lot of times it feels like a hijack, like we have no control over it. And we don't, we might not, and we might not ever. But we do have control over what we do once we notice that happen. And that is when I would say to insert the 4-6-7 breath and see if you can bring your nervous system down a little before you choose how you want to respond. So this puts a pause in between the trigger or something that happens that's activating and your response. If we react, there's no space, right? Trigger, reaction. They like almost feel like they go together and we have no control, or if we feel like we have no control. If we can have the trigger and then do the 4-6-7 breath, it's going to create a space. We're going to get a little more in our prefrontal cortex, calm our amygdala, get our nervous system more balanced. And then we can decide how we want to respond with more intention, with more deliberateness from our true values. Like, who do I really want to be as a person? Rather than like trigger reaction. And then we're like, dang it, that's not who I want to be as a person, right? And then we need to learn how to apologize, because that's going to happen sometimes, right? Repairing ruptures, apologizing, working through things. That is maturity. That's emotional maturity. That is emotional intelligence. That is showing that you're moving through some trauma and stress recovery, okay? Some people aren't able to do that yet because they haven't built enough nervous system capacity to be able to handle that. But isn't that what we want in our lives for our relationships and for our communities and for our world? Okay, that's my soapbox. So let's do this together. So get comfortable. You can lie down, you can stand, you can sit, whatever feels most comfortable. Sometimes when you're doing a breath like this, it's kind of got some longer holds or longer, like something that feels unfamiliar. Laying down can feel much more supportive and can give you more access. I find that not for everybody, but for myself, when I lay down, especially if I'm kind of propped a little bit, like a little incline, like my butt's down here and my shoulders and head are up here, like I might take a bolster and put something under one side and lay over it. It opens my chest and makes it easier to breathe deeply. So you can try that if you're having a hard time doing this seated or standing. Okay. I'm not going to count for you because I want you to find your own counts. I don't want it to feel forced, like you have to do it exactly my count. But I will kind of tell you when I'm breathing and you can then adjust for yourself, okay? So, eyes can be opened or closed. So when you're ready, start to breathe in. I'm going to breathe in. I'm going to hold. I'm going to breathe out. I'm going to breathe in. Hold. And breathe out. I'm going to do one more, breathing in. Hold. Breathing out. And then I'm just going to breathe normally. And what happens is all of a sudden I'm taking this big full breath and I can feel it go all the way down so my belly expands. That means my lungs and those lower part of my lungs are getting the oxygen, the air and the oxygen, and now it's being taken into my bloodstream fully. The holding and the longer exhale builds up our carbon dioxide. And when we feel carbon dioxide build up, we're going to feel an oxygen starvation in our cells. It's not a conscious thing. I mean, you can kind of feel it, right? You're like, all of a sudden, I want to take a really deep breath. That's because your body's saying, hey, I'm starved for oxygen. You need to take a deep breath in. But it can be really hard to do that, like I said at the beginning, if you're breathing from up here. So when you hold and you breathe out long, you're pushing all the air out, creating a negative vacuum. And that negative vacuum, along with the rise in carbon dioxide that happens when you're holding and breathing out long, creates that oxygen starvation that then when you're ready to take an inhale, it comes in fully and it feels really good. Now you might get a little lightheaded if this is something that's new to you. So then you need to do less until you can build up. Maybe you just do one round, maybe you do 1 or 2 rounds and then give it a pause. And then if you practice 1 or 2 rounds several times a day, then you can start to add and do more rounds. When I worked with my biofeedback therapist, she wanted me to build up to being able to do something like this for like 20 minutes. That's a long time. So don't start there, right? You want to start with short. It's better to do short, like 1, 2, 3 breaths, maybe up to 5 breaths at some point, but don't force yourself. It's better to do that like several times a day than to try to do a 20-minute session once a month. Your body and brain will start to feel the pattern and actually rewire if you're doing it more often in short bursts than if you're doing it just once in a while in long time, in a longer period of time, right? So that's how habits get built, in these small things that don't feel too overwhelming or too hard. And if you can do it when you're not feeling stressed, that's going to be super helpful, or not as stressed. And then if you can start to insert it into the moments that do feel more stressful or do feel like you're more activated, that's going to really start to rewire your amygdala as well, or that pathway to your amygdala. So give it a try this week. Let's all give our amygdalas love instead of overworking them so much. It's not their fault, right? They're just doing what they've been trained to do. And it's not our fault either, right? There's things that just happen in our lives. Some of them, most of them, we don't have any control over, that have built our amygdala to be hyper vigilant and kind of always like this and like, and like we're like running around and we're stressed and we're tense and everything feels like this. That is a sign that the nervous system is on overwhelm. That is a sign that there's not balance. And we've been conditioned, we've been trained, it's a protective mechanism. It's all to try to help us survive. But we do have a choice when we're ready, when we feel like it's time to like give ourselves some attention, move into a healing journey or the next part of our healing journey. We do have a choice to slow things down for ourselves so that we can build that resilience within ourselves, that true resilience. Like you can feel it in your body when it happens. I can finally feel it in my body, and I'm 51 years old, and it's just happened really like specifically in the last 6 months where I've really started to feel a shift. But I've noticed little things over the last couple years, just little baby steps, baby steps, baby steps. And finally in the last year and then the last 6 months especially, I'm like, whoa, like I can feel myself. I feel grounded, I feel steady, not 100% of the time, but right now I do. And a lot of the time I can access that. And that is because of doing these sorts of practices along with other things. I have a somatic therapist I work with all the time. And I'm in somatic experiencing training, so I get exposed to this all the time. And I teach it, so I'm exposed to it all the time. But like it does start to shift your life in a very positive, beautiful way. And it reduces suffering. And that is what I hope for everybody. So thank you for joining me. Take care. I'll see you next time.